A warm welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the half hour. U.S. President Donald Trump addresses leaders of the World Economic Forum, making a case for why the U.S. needs Greenland. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says he will not be yielding to President Trump's criticism over the Chagos Islands. Plus, Japan restarts operations at the world's largest nuclear power plant in Fukushima. Let's begin the world today. Leaders have been listening to the address of U.S. President Donald Trump at the World Economic Forum today. President Trump, addressing the hall full of leaders, touched on a number of issues, once again highlighting his administration's efforts at rearranging international relations and global economy to put America on top and encourage the rest of the world to pull itself by the bootstraps. Trump took time, however, to explain his desire to acquire Greenland for America, but says the U.S. will not use force to take control of the Arctic territory.
By the way, Secretary General, who's possibly in the room. Mark, are you here? Yes, he's here. Hello, Mark. We never asked for anything, and we never got anything. We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. Okay? Now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland, where we already had it as a trustee, but respectfully returned it back to Denmark not long ago after we defeated the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians, and others in World War II. We gave it back to them. We were a powerful force then, but we are a much more powerful force now after I rebuilt the military in my first term and continue to do so today.
U.S. President Donald Trump, while forging ahead with his appeal to acquire Greenland, President Trump faced the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. He said America has gotten nothing out of NATO and had protected Europe from the USSR. He even called out some leaders, European leaders that is, on forgetting what America had done for them, including Canada.
What we have gotten out of NATO is nothing except to protect Europe from the Soviet Union and now Russia. I mean, we've helped them for so many years. We've never gotten anything, except we pay for NATO. And we paid for many years until I came along. We paid for, in my opinion, 100% of NATO because they weren't paying their bills. And all we're asking for is to get Greenland, including right title and ownership, because you need the ownership to defend it. You can't defend it on a lease. Number one, legally it's not defensible that way, totally. And number two, psychologically, who the hell wants to defend a license agreement or a lease, which is a large piece of ice in the middle of the ocean where if there is a war, much of the action will take place on that piece of ice. Think of it. Those missiles would be flying right over the center of that piece of ice. All we want from Denmark for national and international security and to keep our very energetic and dangerous potential enemies at bay is this land on which we're going to build the greatest golden dome ever built. We're building a golden dome that's going to, just by its very nature, going to be defending Canada. Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not. I watched your Prime Minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. But they should be grateful to us. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements. What we did for Israel was amazing, but that's nothing compared to what we have planned for the United States, Canada, and the rest of the world. We are going to build a dome like no other. We did it for Israel. And by the way, I told Bibi, stop taking credit for the dome. That's our technology. That's our stuff. But they had a lot of courage, and they were good fighters, and they did a good job.
Staying with the swipe on NATO, President Trump said America had spent trillions of dollars on NATO and asking nothing in return until now.
Have spent, whether foolishly or not, trillions and trillions of dollars on NATO and gotten absolutely nothing in return. We've never asked for anything. It's always a one-way street. Now they want us to help them with Ukraine. And we say we're going to.
Well, those are just highlights of President Donald Trump's speech to leaders at the World Economic Forum just a few hours ago. President Trump is still at the WEF in Davos addressing other questions, I guess, from the audience. Let's bring in now our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, who's been monitoring the speech closely from Washington, where she's been. Maria, great to speak with you on President Trump's address, especially when he talked about Greenland as sounding more like an appeal he was making to the rest of Europe. It's different from the rhetoric in the past that he's made, where he has, in some instances, said he would take Greenland by force and America must have Greenland. How is the Trump administration explaining the president's remarks about not using force this time in the Arctic territory?
Thank you. This was over an hour speech. We didn't end until close to 10 a.m. Eastern time here, as we all were locked into listening to the speech by the president. If you listen to some of the pieces the president talks about, he tried to touch on the area of diplomacy. He made a point to recognize Marco Rubio and his focus around diplomacy and some of the things that he has provided the president advice on around diplomacy. So I think that was his push to try to show that he is a diplomatic president, that he does have some characteristics of diplomacy. I think he also does understand that this is a very contentious situation, especially as we look at our relationships in Europe and how this could create major upheaval with many of our allies. And specifically, I know that he did speak around Canada and kind of some of the tension between the U.S. and Canada there, but noting how close and bordering country of Canada, the need to really have that region to be secure. And so I think he's believes that the world will agree with him and believes that the world will find a way. And he's going to most likely, as we've seen in the past, use tariffs and obviously impacting the economics of many countries as a potential way to implore individuals to agree with him for the United States to have Greenland, acquire Greenland.
Yes, and the president almost seemed to say that NATO was standing in his way, of getting Greenland. America has been bereft of security without Greenland, and he'd gotten NATO. America has gotten NATO nothing, beg your pardon, from NATO, has gotten nothing in return for all the security, and taking on the economic heavyweights, carrying the economic heavyweight for NATO, paying of dues, supporting the organization financially, and other NATO countries not pulling their weight. He also talked about the U.S. handing over Greenland to Denmark, and I dare say that that's not completely correct. The ICJ did rule in 1933 the Greenland belonged to Denmark. So I wonder how this piece of history, however, is being interpreted back home.
Well, you bring up some very key components here as it relates to that historical fact. The president, as we know, is very clear and concise with the way in which he delivers messages. And I would say here at home, I don't know if people really, I think that people might go research to see if that's true. Many people don't know much of the 1933 history and individuals who weren't around during that period of time to really be able to reflect on exactly how that occurred. But the president, I think, is trying to provide a message that states that the U.S. does have some sort of a need or desire and also kind of an inherent right to Greenland, and I think that was his focus there in trying to provide that messaging. But as you mentioned, the ICJ ruling in 1933, I think Americans are not surprised. I think they're really trying to take in the full scope of the speech because there was a lot there. And obviously, the U.S. stock market took quite a hit yesterday. And so hoping that this economic forum in some way does provide and that the president is able to in some way repair some of the global challenges that the U.S. obviously faces.
And finally, Maria, do you think President Trump's address to leaders at Davos will help change their minds and perhaps be more compassionate towards President Trump's desire? Because if you do listen to him very carefully, President Trump's tone was more somber. He almost seemed hurt by the fact that Europe would not grant him this one wish, considering all that America has done for the continent.
You know, it's very hard to, obviously, you couldn't hear a pin drop in the audience during the speech. We know that there are several bilateral meetings happening between today and tomorrow. We know that he plans to have very clear conversations, but there was a lot said in the speech. There are some things that some world leaders could be offended by. There's some things in the speech that they might agree with. And so I think it's really going to depend on where these meetings land after this. It also depends upon what happens around tariffs as it relates to individuals doing business with the U.S. That is obviously a major stake in this whole process and in what the president's been trying to put forth. And so at this time, I think we are really going to have to wait and see. It looks as if we're not on the immediate acquiring of Greenland. It looks like there could be some more diplomatic conversations. And also it's going to depend on Greenland's response to this as well. I think we can expect to see another meeting in the United States, maybe seeing some of the world leaders coming to discuss this further. But I'm not sure if, even though to your point, he had a very somber tone, if that did totally take a different direction for world leaders to now agree and believe that the president of the United States should lead the efforts in the United States acquiring Greenland. I think that we'll have to see what happens in the next couple of days.
Thanks again, Maria. We'll be looking to you for the updates from the United States. Thanks again. In another development, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says he will not surrender to the pressure from the US President Donald Trump over the future of Greenland. Starmer made his statement
Mr. Speaker,
earlier today while addressing Parliament. He further informed lawmakers he would host Danish counterpart Mette Frederiksen in London tomorrow. Recall that Donald Trump had threatened to impose tariffs on Britain and other European countries for opposing his claims on Greenland. Starmer was also taunted in Parliament by opposition Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch over Trump's condemnation of his government's Chagos Islands deal.
what President Trump... Mr. Speaker, engaging constructively on international security matters hugely, particularly when it comes to security in the Arctic, and that's the context in which this discussion is going on in relation to Greenland. As we engage constructively, I have made my position clear on our principles and values. The first of those is that the future of Greenland is for the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone. The second is that threats of tariffs to pressurise allies are completely wrong. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to engage constructively. I've had many international calls in recent days, and the Prime Minister of Denmark is coming to the United Kingdom tomorrow for bilateral talks. But I do want to be clear with the House. I will not yield, Britain will not yield on our principles and values about the future of Greenland under threats of tariffs. And that is my clear position.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very glad to hear the Prime Minister say that. We all know that the people of Greenland do not want to be ruled by America. But does he agree that just as those in Greenland should decide their own future, so should the Chagossians?
Mr. Speaker, I've made out my position on Greenland absolutely clear on Monday and a moment ago. President Trump deployed words on Chagos yesterday that were different to his previous words of welcome and support when I met him in the White House. He deployed those words yesterday for the express purpose of putting pressure on me and Britain in relation to my values and principles on the future of Greenland. Mr. Speaker, he wants me to yield on my position, and I'm not going to do so.
We're off on a short break on The World Today. Still ahead. Amidst the winter chill in China, there's some warmth at the Tianjin. Welcome back. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has accepted an invitation to join U.S. President Donald Trump's Board of Peace. A statement from his office said Netanyahu will become a member of the board, which is to be comprised of world leaders. The board was originally thought to be aimed at helping end the two-year war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza and oversee reconstruction. But his proposed charter does not mention the Palestinian territory and appears to be designed to supplant functions of the UN. The United Arab Emirates and Bahrain have also agreed to join, as have Albania, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Hungary, Kazakhstan, Morocco, and Vietnam. While Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to respond to any Iranian attack against Israel with a force unlike anything they've ever experienced before. He was saying this during a speech to the Israeli Knesset in Jerusalem. He told them, if Iran makes the mistake of attacking us, we will respond with a force unlike anything they have ever experienced before. No one can predict what will happen in Iran tomorrow, but one thing is certain: whatever happens, it will never be the same again. Since December 28th, Iran has witnessed protests that began in Tehran and later spread to other cities, driven by worsening economic conditions and the sharp decline of the Iranian rial against the US dollar. In recent days, however, several Iranian cities have seen unrest and acts of vandalism targeting public property. Iranian officials have accused what they describe as enemy forces of training groups inside and outside the country and bringing militants in from abroad. A train driver has been killed and at least 37 other people injured, 5 of them seriously, after a commuter train derailed and crashed near Barcelona 2 days after a deadly two-train collision in southern Spain. Local officials say the roadless train collided with a retaining wall, which fell on the track between Gelida and San Sadurní. Catalonia Regional Fire Inspector Claudi Gallardo said all the passengers have been removed from the train. The incident occurred as heavy storms battered northeastern Spain, with coastal areas in the east and northwest of Spain on high alert because of the weather. Well, in Asia, Japan has restarted operations at the world's largest nuclear power plant, set for the first time since the 2011 Fukushima disaster that forced the country to shut all of its reactors. The decision to restart reactor number 6 at Kashiwazaki, Kariwa, northwest of Tokyo, was taken despite local residents' safety concerns. It was delayed by a day because of an alarm malfunction and is due to begin operating commercially next month. Heavily reliant on energy imports, Japan was nearly an early adopter of nuclear power, but in 2011, all 54 of Japan's reactors had to be shut after the most powerful earthquake it had ever recorded triggered a meltdown at Fukushima, causing one of the worst nuclear disasters in history. We'll turn our attention to Berlin, which has been encouraging people to do something slightly unusual today. They've been asked to go collect potatoes that are being given away for free, and that's because the city has 4 million kilograms of potatoes it does not know what to do with. How did that happen? Here to tell us all about it is the DW's Emily Leshner from the German capital. Emily, great to see you. Can people really go and collect free potatoes? And why are there so many extra potatoes to begin with?
Yes, that is true. Berliners can go to a number of different places where they can collect potatoes free of charge. These are places like bakeries and shops that have agreed to be distribution points. And because potatoes are a big part of German cuisine and because they won't cost you anything today, I think a lot of people are going to take advantage of this offer, at least until the potatoes run out. Now, the reason there are so many potatoes for the taking has to do with last year's harvest. Germany had a record harvest last year, and this drove down prices. A lot of farmers weren't able to sell their potatoes for a profit. And farmers that didn't already have contracts locked in with buyers, they found themselves with potatoes that they couldn't offload because the market was already so saturated. When I was driving around at the end of the year last year, I saw personally potatoes piled up on the sides of fields, left there to decompose or to be used later as biofuel. So this initiative in Berlin is an attempt to reduce some of the waste we saw at the end of last year. These potatoes come from the region of Saxony. It's a big region for potato farming. So bringing the surplus here and giving them away is a win-win in the sense that the farm won't have to throw away the potatoes and that the residents here can enjoy them.
But Emily, what drove the record harvest last year?
That's a very good question. There were a few factors. One is weather. We had a lot of rain last summer and a lot of sun later in the season, so the potato growing conditions were perfect. The other reason is that Germany planted more hectares of potato fields than ever before. There were almost 19,000 additional hectares planted last year than the year before. So with the increased planting and the really great weather, that resulted in this surplus. At the end of last year, at the end of the harvest, there were an estimated 13 million kilos of potatoes produced in Germany.
It almost makes me want to come to Germany to get some potatoes. So will you be planning on collecting a bag at least today?
Of course, I certainly will. I will be heading to get some free potatoes right after I leave work today.
Right, Emily. Wish I could be right behind you. Thanks again for joining us on the program. And as we end the world today, amid the winter chill, Shuiji Park came alive with lights as the 2026 Tianjin International Lantern Festival transformed the venue into a dazzling display of giant silk and steel lanterns. Well, looking at the festival spanning over 250,000 square meters with 2.5-kilometer loop trail, guiding visitors through a dazzling display of lanterns that blend ancient Chinese culture with modern art. Well, the lanterns reflect Tianjin's distinctive culture, featuring mythical figures, scenes from folklore, areas themed around transport and entertainment, and displays celebrating childhood memories cherished across generations. Being one of the largest lantern festivals in the region, the event offers a place for family outings, photography enthusiasts in search of the perfect shot, and anyone seeking wonder. The festival began in late December and it will run until March if you're in the region. That's the world we live in, and that's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.